Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you. It's been such a long time, and I felt I need to get back to what I'm supposed to be doing here. So that's the purpose of my video. This is my updated Roswell road trip report. This is my definitive illustrated Roswell chronology timeline here. Um, I'm not saying that this is perfect, but it's the best possible presentation that I can come with. So I revisited the case, redid the illustrations. Don Schmitt and Tom Carey have reviewed a lot of this material. Again, I'm not saying it's perfect, but this is the best that I can do. So let's proceed here. We'll take this slowly. We're not going to rush this. I want people to be able to come back to this, and I really want this to be the definitive chronological illustrated timeline here. And I'm going to minimize myself here, and we'll go ahead and hit you with this book, Witness to Roswell by Don Schmitt and Tom Carey. I want to give these guys credit for such a perfectly well done book. If you have anyone that's skeptical about Roswell, someone that's sitting on the fence, I invite you to give them this book. You cannot put this book down thinking that there's nothing to Roswell. Certainly not a weather balloon, certainly not a Project Mogul balloon. They go into the first-hand military witnesses to Roswell, people who loaded the craft, people who were on the autopsy, people who flew the bodies. It's a great book. So let's continue. And I've got to hit you with the overall map here because we're actually talking about four separate events here, four separate areas associated with the Roswell incident. Now, if we look at the bottom right, that's Roswell. And then if you go diagonally 45 degrees, you're going to see two dots. We want to focus on that upper dot, which is the touchdown site. That's 5 nautical miles north of the debris field, where Lincoln La Paz and 509th Bomb Group member Louis Rickett found two things. Number one, they found fused green glass. And number two, they found a seamless black box that was the size of a bread box. Those are the two things they found. So right off the bat, you can eliminate the weather balloon because a weather balloon isn't going to fuse sand into glass. So that's number one. Now, south of the touchdown site, we have the famous debris field site, which was on the Foster Ranch. That's the one that Brazel discovered. Now, this all happened on the night of July 2nd, 11:59 p.m. It wasn't July 4th, it wasn't July 7th, it was July 2nd, 11:59 p.m. Now, Matt Brazel and Timothy D. Proctor discovered multiple types of debris. I want to get into the details, but they discovered this very small tinfoil type debris that could not be cut, could not be burned, could not be dented with a 16-pound sledgehammer. They also found the so-called memory metal, where you could crumple this up, fold it multiple times, and then it would spread out like liquid mercury and float down to the table. That's debris number two. Debris number three were these small I-beams with pastel hieroglyphic type writing written on the inside wall. So those are the three types of debris. Now, the main craft, which we don't know what it looked like because it's believed it was hit by lightning, exploded, and then rained down debris. The main craft disintegrated. However, the escape pod, which was 13 feet across, looked like an egg, continued traveling eastbound. So you see here on my map, you've got these indicators, these arrows that show you the trajectory southeastbound. The craft continued to travel southeastbound, but on its way 2.5 miles east of the debris field was the second body site, also known as the D. Proctor site, where two bodies were ejected from the craft. The craft continued to travel southeastbound until it remained at the crash site, which was 35 miles north of Roswell and 5 miles to the west of Highway 285. So there were 5 bodies recovered and 1 was still alive. 2 were ejected 2.5 miles east of the debris field. And so what you end up with here, are 2 remaining deceased E-bodies and then a survivor at the crash site. All right, let's continue on here. Now, I want to start here with our good friend Stephen Schiff. Some of you might remember this gentleman. What happened when Representative Stephen Schiff attempted to recover the Roswell records? What did this guy try to do? He tried to go into the Pentagon and get the information. But look what happened here. Fort Worth Star-Telegram, July 30th, 1995. Roswell UFO records destroyed, lawmaker says. They destroyed the files. Can you believe it? It's unbelievable. They destroyed the files. Let's go to the blow up here. Quote, documents that should have provided more information were destroyed, Schiff said. The military cannot explain who destroyed them or why. So here we've got the most incredible bombshell event of all of history, and the military destroys the records? How is this even possible? The most historical event of all mankind, we could make an argument, you know, like first-hand contact with an extraterrestrial being, and would they destroy the records? Is this actually true? Did they really destroy the records, or are we being told and being sold a bill of goods here? Okay, the first witnesses of the Roswell UFO were Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot, who saw a bright glowing object in the sky near their home north of town on July 3rd, 1947. So that's kind of the timeline here. Now, Batesville Guard, June 19th, 1997, Roswell events 50 years later. Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot were apparently the only people in Roswell who had seen what they thought was a flying disc, the Daily Record reported, from where they stood. Wilmot said that the object looked to be about 5 feet in height, and making allowance from how far it was from town, he figured it must have been 15 to 20 feet in diameter. Wilmot, who is one of the most respected and reliable citizens in town, kept the story to himself, hoping that someone else would come out and tell about having seen one, but finally today decided that he would go ahead and tell about seeing it. The announcement that the Roswell Army Airfield was in possession of one came only a few minutes after he had decided to release the details of what he had seen. But again, we're still talking about 11:59 p.m., July 2nd, 1947. All right, now, St. Mary's Hospital. So after the Wilmot saw it, the other 2 witnesses are these. St. Mary's Hospital, location of sighting by 2 Roman Catholic nuns, Mother Superior Mary Bernadette and Sister Capistrano, saw a flaming object falling toward Earth north of their position. Okay, so they were the second witnesses. This is a picture of the hospital. They were on the 3rd floor. I'm going to go on to the next one, and you can see Rudy's drawing here. He did a great job on this. They're looking out this 3rd floor window, and they see this object coming down at an angle, and they actually recorded it in their logbook. So somewhere there's a recording of this. It'd be great to get that logbook. Let's continue on here. So here is the full color rendering of the craft coming down at a slight angle, but these were the 3rd and 2nd first-hand witnesses of the craft actually coming down. And again, we've got our map right here that shows you the touchdown site, we have the debris field, we've got the second body site, and we've got the crash site. So here is the landscape of what it looks like if we were there today. It hasn't changed much, but it's flat. It's got some low shrub desert terrain. There's a couple of very low rolling hills, but for all intents and purposes, it's a flat Roswell landscape. So now we've got the morning of July 3rd, 1947. We've got rancher Mac Brazel and 7-year-old Timothy D. Proctor discover the debris field on the Foster Ranch. And this is kind of like them coming up on it. The sheep would not cross this area. There was a trench, a debris field. We talked about the 3 types of debris. And for years, the sheep would not cross the debris field, which I thought was very interesting. So again, you can throw out the mogul balloon and you can throw out the weather balloon. Let me hit you with another version of this that I did here. This gives you an idea. Now, there definitely was kind of a gouge in the terrain, and there's debris on either side. We've got Mac Brazel and 7-year-old Timothy D. Proctor. Landscape of escape pod crash site with water tank in the background. So where this thing actually came down, the actual resting place for the crash site of the egg-shaped craft was kind of a flat, rocky outgrowth. That is where the craft actually settled. And then this is all that remains of the windmill and the water tank. So these famous reminders of the most significant event, this is all that's really left to identify where the area is here. So this is July 3rd, 1947, and all these are chronology driven here. Mac Brazel loads his pickup truck with material from the debris field. So I wonder what was going through his mind back in July 1947. You know, just seeing this debris and wondering what it is. What am I recovering here? This strange type debris. You've got the fiber optics. You've got the small memory metal. We've got some of the I-beams in here. But I wonder what was going through Mac Brazel's mind when he was just recovering this. Let's go on to the next one here. Now, it's interesting to point out that July 4th, 1947, Mac Brazel travels to the Capitan Rodeo and shows pieces of the debris to his friends and relatives. This is actually historical. This went down. Don Schmitt and Tom Carey confirm that this actually took place. He actually brought the debris and was showing it to the people at the rodeo. I mean, unbelievable, but it's historical. Now, July 5th, 1947, Mac Brazel travels to Wade's Bar in Corona, New Mexico, and displays wreckage from the Roswell debris field. So here we've got Mac Brazel kind of bringing everything into a cigar box. He walks into the bar. There's some patrons there. He pulls up to the front part where all the beers are put down on the bar there. And he's kind of showing people this debris, and they're wondering what this is. They have no idea. He doesn't know what it is either. And he's thinking, who's going to clean this mess up? His exact words. Let me go on to the next slide here. Here's Rudy's drawing that kind of shows you what I used to create a lot of these images, because I revisited this case and I wanted to make this period correct and something that we can put a visual aid to preserve an important part of our national history. Let's go on to the next one here. Here's the blow up of the box of the debris. Wouldn't it be great if we had that today? And then this is my final rendering of the interior of this cigar box. Today, the contents of this cigar box would be worth millions if we could actually have this here. So think of this type of debris that you could, and I'm going to bring my paper over here. You could basically crumple this up, right? Just like a piece of paper. Let go, and this would unfold like liquid mercury and then just come back down to the table again. Incredible type properties on this debris. Let's continue on. Here's Mac Brazel. This is the gentleman. There are virtually no photographs of this guy. There might be 2 or 3 on the internet, period. This is the most famous one, but he is the central figure in this entire case. And what happened to him is a crime. I mean, the way he was treated is an absolute crime. So we want to preserve his legacy and his memory. So I put together a flyer that basically tells the story in about 2 paragraphs. And I included 3 visual aids of the case below. And I started going to all the different Roswell sites. I went to Wade's Bar, which is now the Corona Laundromat, believe it or not. Photo of Wade's Bar in Corona, New Mexico, as it appears today, which is a local laundromat. Location of where Mac Brazel showed pieces of Roswell debris that he had collected to patrons of the bar. So all that's left now of this famous Wade's Bar is a laundromat. I did get a little bit of feedback from people there, but nothing that would be completely significant. So let's continue on here. July 6, 1947. Mac Brazel travels to downtown Roswell and arrives at the Chaves County Sheriff's Office. He carries with him 2 medium-sized boxes of material recovered from the debris field. So once the sheep wouldn't cross that area, he started picking this up, drove all the way from the debris field to the sheriff's office, which was no small feat. We're talking about 75 miles on unimproved roads back in 1947 in a rickety truck, which I'm going to talk about later. So here he is walking into the sheriff's office. And then here we have George Wilcox, July 6, 1947. He examines the debris on his desk, and he's thinking, what's going on here? What is this debris? I've never seen this before. We've got the I-beams, we've got the fiber optic cables, we've got the memory metal. What is this debris? I've never seen this. Let's continue on here. Now we've got July 7th, 1947 morning, Major Jesse Marcel and Sheridan Cabot, who's the CIC member, Counterintelligence Corps, arrive at the debris field. And you can see very flat area, mountains in the background. They pull up in a Jeep. Sheridan had his own vehicle as well. And they're looking at the debris thinking, is this one of ours? We didn't get any reports at our end. And from the day he died, Major Jesse Marcel said that this wasn't anything of ours. Let's continue on here. Major Jesse Marcel, it certainly wasn't anything built by us. Direct quote from Major Jesse Marcel. Now, July 7th, 1947, early morning, and this is before the military arrived here. And archaeologists and students from Texas Tech discover a 13-foot long egg-shaped escape pod 35 miles north of Roswell. They also find 2 deceased ET bodies and a survivor. So I did my very best to give you an illustration of this archaeologist that Tom Carey actually tracked down. And here they are at the escape pod, which was 13 feet across, the size of a Volkswagen and shaped like an egg. I wonder what stories they told their family when they came back in town that day. So just incredible that, again, this is before the military got there. These archaeologist students actually saw this. Let's continue on. First civilian on the scene to the Roswell crash site was a fireman named Dan Dwyer, far left. Now, he got there after the archaeologist and the team. Let me go on. So he's over to the far left. The way he got there, and this is by Tom Carey, in a tanker truck, something that looked like this. So he was with a friend. They both drove up in this tanker truck, and I'm going to hit you with the next slide here. And here they are pulling up. Fireman Dan Dwyer pulls up to the Roswell crash site in a tanker pickup truck and is shocked to see a 13-foot long egg-shaped craft embedded in a rocky outgrowth, along with 2 deceased ET bodies and a third that was still alive. So I want to give credit to Rudy Gardea for doing this sketch. However, there's a couple of tweaks that we need to make it more historically correct. Number one, the escape pod should be probably about 30% smaller. And number two, the location of where this came down was a flat area, not a sheer cliff. So again, I'm going to give you where we can improve, but it's optimized to the best of my ability at this point. Let's continue on here. Here is an accurate rendering that I came up with. Here's the tanker truck. We've got Dan Dwyer pulled up. July 7th, 1947, early afternoon. Local Roswell fireman Dan Dwyer drives to the crash site in a personal vehicle or firehouse tanker and witnesses the escape pod, 2 deceased ET bodies, and a survivor stumbling around near the craft. So I wonder what was going through his mind when he saw this escape pod and a survivor. I did another version here just so that I can drive this point home, how significant this must have been. Let's do another one here. Here is the hull breach on the side of the craft. There absolutely was damage to the vehicle. You've got the water tank, and we've also got the windmill in the background. This was my attempt to show the bodies. So we're talking about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit that was fully integrated, it appeared, into their skin. This is another version I did just to kind of preserve an important part of our national history. And, thinking about his ride back, what was going through his mind after seeing this and the survivor. Let's continue on. Now, according to Witness to Roswell by Don Schmitt and Tom Carey, July 7th, 1947, Charlie Schmitt heard about the crash and decided to investigate for himself. He drove his motorcycle near the Corona debris field and picked up pieces of the wreckage. So here's another civilian that heard about this and decided to do his own investigation. Drove up to the debris field. He got to the outer outskirts of where the debris field came down, picked up a couple of pieces. He started hearing military vehicles, so he skedaddled out of there immediately. Let's continue on here. What lengths did the military go through to recover every scrap of Roswell debris that ended up in civilian hands? Now we get into what the military was doing, the cover-up, the denials, the threatening nature, the physical threats that were going on. What did the military do to cover this up? Let me continue on here. Individual wooden planks from livestock sheds were pried loose in an effort to recover Roswell wreckage debris discovered and hidden away by civilians. So once the whole story of the Roswell crash permeated the entire town of Roswell like wildfire, and people were picking up souvenirs, the military came in soon after and started threatening witnesses, and they went into storage sheds and pulled up wooden planks and were looking for people, debris that was hidden away. This is something that absolutely went on here. Let's continue on. Here's another little bit of a blow up here. The military trying to get all the debris. To this day, I'm certain that there are people in Roswell that still have pieces of debris. It's a mathematical certainty. Okay, July 7th, 1947, afternoon. Police officer Robert Scroggins displays pieces of the Roswell debris to members of the Roswell Fire Department and 12-year-old Frankie Dwyer. So that's the daughter of Dan Dwyer. She was waiting for her father to come back after he went out to go to the crash site. So while they're in the fire department here, and you can see here the police officer Robert Scroggins, he shows the debris to Frankie Dwyer and a couple of members of the fire department, and they must have also folded up the debris and let it fall down to the table. In fact, this is exactly what Frankie talked about, because she got to hold the debris herself. Let's continue on here. July 7th, 1947, mid-afternoon, Captain Sheridan Kavitz fills his Jeep carryall to the brim with wreckage, and he is therefore dispatched back to the Roswell Army Airfield, leaving Marcel by himself to continue the search for additional debris. This thing was completely packed up, and then he went back to the base, leaving Major Marcel to contemplate what was going on. He picked up no more debris, and we're going to go on to the next slide here. July 7th, 1947, evening. Matt Brazel is found at his Corona ranch house after a mad search for him by Frank Joyce and Walt Whitmore and driven back to Roswell. He arrives at the private home of radio station KGFL owner Walter Whitmore Sr. to do a wire-recorded interview, which was later confiscated by the military. This is something that has never been heard. Wouldn't it be great if we could hear this interview by Mac Brazel? It was confiscated. We've never heard it. The military most likely still has this recording. Wouldn't it be great to hear this recording for the very first time? And I highly doubt that they scrapped it. I highly doubt that they threw out the documents. They're just telling us that they threw it out. I don't think they ever threw it out. I still think it's at a vault somewhere. July 7th, 1947, late afternoon, getting into the evening. So now we've got the military arriving at the crash site. Military arrives at the so-called impact site just north of Roswell and discovers a strange 13-foot-long egg-shaped craft with a hull breach on one side. 2 dead alien corpses are recovered, badly decomposed and wearing tight-fitting silver-colored flight suits. One other entity was discovered still alive. So again, at the crash site, there were 2 deceased ET corpses and there was a survivor. I mean, it's unbelievable that there's a survivor. Let's continue on here. July 7th, 1947, evening. Photographer Fred Benthal snaps photos of 2 deceased ET bodies inside a dimly lit tent at the crash site. So now we've got them recording the whole event with still photography. Where are those photographs? Wouldn't we love to have those? I highly doubt that they scrapped or destroyed those photos. July 8th, 1947, very early morning, 2 a.m. Jesse Marcel drives back to Roswell Army Airfield, but first stops off at his Roswell home to show his wife and son pieces of the wreckage. It is here that young Jesse Marcel Jr., who passed away, it's been years now, discovers strange writing on the inside wall of an I-beam. So he was kind of the first one to discover the pastel hieroglyphic type writing on the inside wall of the I-beam here. Let's continue on. July 8th, 1947, morning. So now the military is fully involved in the retrieval operation. Is fully underway at this point. Multiple military vehicles are present, including 2 Jeeps, an ambulance truck, 6x6 troop transport, and lowboy tractor trailer. So I want to give credit to Tom Bogan, who's no longer with us, but he did kind of the first pass illustration that gives you an idea of what the crash site looked like. So we've got the ambulance truck, we've got the 6x6 troop transport, we've got the Jeep, we've got the lowboy 18-wheeler tractor trailer, we've got the egg-shaped craft with a low-rise dome, we've got the hull breach, the 2 deceased ET bodies, and the survivor who is at the back end of the ambulance truck. July 8th, 1947, morning, and I thought this is interesting. Word of the crash spread through the town of Roswell like wildfire. According to Patricia Rice, owner of the Alley Bookstore in Roswell during July 1947, quote, I can say without much exaggeration that the news of the crash got around that town of 25,000 people in about 25 minutes. So can you think about this? No internet, no cell phones, but yet word of the crash spread like wildfire through the entire town within 25 minutes. So that just gives you an indication of just how serious and significant and how inspired people were to just find out about this, learn more about this, get souvenirs, get trophies. They were interested in this. How can the military come in there and shut these people up? Let's continue on. So here is the 1947 Roswell Army Airfield yearbook. And we're going to look inside here. We're going to see who we can find, who might be interesting to learn more about here. Sergeant William W. Bud Taylor, and you can see I've got the little bit of an arrow here that shows you this gentleman. We'll do a blow up. Sergeant William W. Bud Taylor. What did he do? Here's El Paso Times. This is the obituary. Services for W.F. Bud Taylor, 87 of Roswell, will be at 10 a.m. Friday in the First Church of the Nazarene. Burial will be in the South Park Cemetery. He died Monday. Arrangements are by the funeral home. Okay, so this is his obituary. This is a real guy. He was there. Eyewitness testimony from a 509th Bomb Group member who looked inside the Roswell escape pod. We're talking about the same guy here. Sergeant William W. Bud Taylor. What did he say? We'll go through the bullet items. The craft, Taylor said, quote, seemed like it could have been from Earth, only from our future. Certain areas of the interior of the craft were entwined with a network of strange plastic-like fibers or filaments, like fiber optics. The interior was also outfitted with embedded flat screens or display panels. An ethereal violet or pink purple color was incorporated into some of the materials of the construction of the craft. Some of the craft structure was embossed with unusual hieroglyphic-like symbols that he described as being somewhat like Asian writing. There were bodies. Small corpses were found that he described as being like little humans. So this is from a guy who was there and looked inside the craft. Here was our first pass drawing by Rudy. July 8th, 1947, early morning. Sergeant William Bud Taylor, 509th Bomb Group member, looks inside the Roswell escape pod and observes what appears to be flat screen monitors, fiber optics embedded into the structure, and strange hieroglyphic type markings written on the inside. Here was the updated drawing by Rudy Gardea. So I want to give you the updated. So we did a little bit of optimization here. You can see the fiber optic cables. We've got the flat screen monitors. We've got the hieroglyphic type writing. Now this is from a 509th Bomb Group member who looked inside the craft. This is a credible witness. Let's go on here. So of course I had to do a full color rendering. I'm not saying this is perfect, but this is the best I could do. That gives you an inside view of what this escape pod looks like. And again, this is 13 feet across. That was the size of a Volkswagen. So I've got the flat screen monitors. I've got the hieroglyphic type writing. I've got the fiber optic cables embedded within the structure of the floor of the craft itself. Let's continue on. Ernst Steinhoff, Operation Paperclip. So he was one of these members that were involved in Operation Paperclip. What did he say about Roswell here? Let me go to the next slide. Ernst Steinhoff, the Roswell craft was not extraterrestrial, it was extra-dimensional. This is his assessment. Let me go on to the next one. Navy Commander George W. Hoover, seated left. So here you see him at the left of this photograph, seated, with Werner von Braun in the foreground here. Let me go on to what he said. The Roswell visitors were not extraterrestrial, but actually extratemporal, from our future. So this is kind of a new understanding. They're from our future because the 509th Bomb Group, our Bud Taylor, said that it looked modern, but it didn't look too far into the future. So is that what they meant by from our future? A civilian contractor from downtown Roswell was called in to assist with the retrieval operation, drawing by Rudy Gardea. So, yes, that's correct. For some reason, Roswell Army Airfield, home of the 509th Bomb Group, for some reason, they did not have a crane. So they had to bring in a civilian contractor that drove all the way up 35 miles from downtown Roswell up to the crash site. They're the ones who assisted with the retrieval operation. Let me go on to the next slide here. So this was the absolute best optimized full color illustration that I could put together that gives you an idea of what the retrieval operation looked like. So here we've got the Jeeps on site. We've got the military personnel. We've got the 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy truck loading the escape pod onto the back trailer. They covered it up with a tarp, and then I'm going to show you what they actually did. But this is the best that I could come up with just to give you an idea of what that looks like. July 8th, 1947, morning. First body flight out of Roswell occurs in a C-54, piloted by Oliver Pappy Henderson. This guy I would love to have talked to. This flight was flown in the raw condition, and the bodies were exposed to the air inside the fuselage of the C-54, and it's not pressurized. This flight flew from Roswell Army Airfield directly to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. So this was directly to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. And this is Rudy's drawing here that shows you Pappy Henderson overseeing the loading of the body into his C-54 because he's pilot in command. Now let's talk about Sappho Henderson, who is Pappy Henderson's wife. What did she have to say about this? Sappho Henderson, that's the woman. What did she have to say? This is the wife of Pappy Henderson. Baltimore Sun, April 20th, 1997. Sappho Henderson, widow of Captain Oliver W. Henderson, a senior pilot at Roswell, says her husband told her privately in 1982 that he had flown wreckage of a spacecraft and a C-54 to what is now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base outside Dayton, Ohio. He said he saw the bodies of extraterrestrials, Henderson, who told the same story to Dennis, who died in 1986. So here we've got Sappho Henderson talking about what her husband told her about seeing the bodies and flying them in a C-54 to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So it was Pappy who died in 1986. Now, there are some reports, sometime after July 1947, the body of a small humanoid being was examined at the Guggenheim Foundation Laboratory on 23rd Street in New York. Is this one of the bodies from Roswell? We may never know, but this is apparently what was something that actually took place. Okay, now, morning, July 8th, 1947. We've got Mac Brazel being apprehended by the military off the streets of Roswell after breakfast and is held against his will at Roswell Army Airfield. He is interrogated and threatened for 5 days and eventually is forced to undergo a full body cavity search. I mean, think about the way he was treated. Think about the humiliation, the scare tactics, the threatening tone, and a full body cavity search all over a weather balloon? Something else going on here. It appears that Mac saw more than just the debris. Did he see the bodies? Did he see the bodies? Let's continue on here. July 8th, 1947, 11 a.m. Colonel William Blanchard, who is the base commander, Roswell Army Airfield, issues the famous press release that the military had retrieved a flying disc. So here we've got Roswell Daily Record, July 8th, 1947. Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. July 8th, 1947, afternoon. Military arrives at the debris field and starts the cleanup operation. 3 teams of men 60 feet wide on hands and knees recover wreckage, which is placed into a burlap bags and then loaded into 6x6 trucks. So here you've got all these guys shoulder to shoulder on hands and knees, crisscrossing the debris field, picking up this debris, putting it into burlap bags. We've got some of the 509th Bomb Group members that stated that when they put this debris in the burlap bags, it unfolded. It happened multiple times. Let me go on to the next slide here. And what I want to demonstrate in this slide is that once the debris was put into the burlap bags and they finished their retrieval operations, we've got reports from these gentlemen that they came in with industrial vacuum cleaners and also crisscrossed the debris field with industrial vacuum cleaners to finish up the job and make absolutely sure that no debris was left behind. So again, this is all over a weather balloon, according to the Air Force. No way. Something else is going on here. There is no way that they would bring industrial vacuum cleaners all the way from downtown Roswell, 75 miles to the debris field. No, not going to happen. It's a done deal. It's case closed at this point. We have got these guys. We've got the Air Force. And we will not stop this fight until we get this information released into the public domain. This is something that the whole world needs to find out about it. Let me continue on here. July 8th, 1947, afternoon. Associated Press photographer Robin Adair got a good look at the debris field, including military vehicles and personnel from his perspective of the small rented plane. So here he is flying in a Piper Cub, looking out the window. He saw the debris field, he saw the military, he saw the troop transport. So this is another good witness from the Associated Press. He got to see something that we would love to have seen. July 8th, 1947, 1 p.m., and we're all doing this in chronological order. William Woody and his father are stopped by the military police heading north on Highway 285. They both witnessed guards with carbines preventing civilians from traveling west off the highway. Okay, so if you look at Rudy's drawing here, they're told to stop. And what was going on is they didn't want any civilians traveling westbound off of Highway 285 to get souvenirs, because everybody wanted to get a souvenir back at that time. This is the period correct truck they were driving. I'm going to go on to the next slide here. And here you see military police stopping traffic, heading northbound on 285. They want to make absolutely sure no one can go westbound to pick up debris and souvenirs. And let's continue on here. Here is the map that shows you the stars that I put on. That's the location that they had military police posted so that no one could visit the debris field, the crash site, the second body site. They didn't want anyone getting anywhere close to this area. July 8th, 1947, 2 p.m. B-29 Dave's Dream leaves Roswell Army Airfield and flies to 8th Air Force Headquarters, Fort Worth, Texas, carrying Jesse Marcel and pieces of wreckage. This is at 2 p.m., July 8th, 1947. July 8th, 1947, 4 p.m. Military convoy consisting of 2 jeeps, a large lowboy tractor trailer, transporting a strange egg-shaped craft covered by a tarp, and then 2 additional jeeps following from behind are seen driving down Main Street in Roswell. The entire convoy was seen by at least 1 paperboy and multiple additional eyewitnesses. So after they recovered the escape pod, put it on the 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy truck, they had to get it back to the base. And really the only way to do it is to go right down Main Street, Roswell. And you can follow today the course that the convoy took. Today you can follow the exact same route that they took to make it to the base. You can follow that course today. So here's my illustration showing you the 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy truck with the escape pod covered by a tarp going to the base from the crash site. So let's continue on here. Now, there's something I want to talk about here. July 8th, 1947, 4 p.m. A local roofer was on the job on Alexander Street when the military convoy passed down Main Street in Roswell. From his unique perspective, he could see unknown debris exposed from under the tarp. So here you've got this guy on the job site here, not thinking of what's going on, and he's pounding these nails into these tiles onto the roof here, and all of a sudden this convoy goes right down Main Street, and from his 45-degree look-down oversight angle, he could see the tarp-covered escape pod, but then he said that he could see debris sticking out from under the tarp. So he was probably one of the only people that got this bird's eye view looking down, and he could see debris from under the tarp of the egg-shaped craft. So here he is looking down. This is my illustration that gives you an idea of what this looks like. Something like this was seen by a roofer exactly when this convoy went down Main Street. Now, the convoy makes it to the base. They go in the other side into Hangar P3. So this is July 8th, 1947, 4:15 p.m. Military convoy arrives at Roswell Army Airfield 509th Bomb Group and drives directly into the east side of Hangar P3 Building 84. This hangar serves as the central command center for the entire Roswell crash retrieval operation. So this is one of the original illustrations by Tom Bogan. I want to give him credit. I did kind of an updated version that gives you a little bit more detail here. You can see the child-sized caskets. You can see the large crate in the background. We've got the escape pod off to the background on the right-hand side. We've got the bodies retrieved, getting ready for the bodies flights out. Here is my second pass, more refined illustration of the escape pod. This gives you an idea of what that looks like. And I'm always improving and optimizing to the best of my ability so that people can get an idea of what this looked like back in July 1947. I did multiple versions of this. So I rotated it around. This is the area that was untouched. The other slide was of the damage on the escape pod egg. Let me hit you with another version here. What was going through the minds of the 509th Bomb Group members? They had heard about this crash, and now this escape pod pulls into the hangar. What were these guys thinking? Would love to have been there. Let me go on to the next one here. This is another version of the escape pod. Military is on the site, in the scene. We've got the tarp is partially covering the craft. Again, what was going through these guys' minds here? This is one of my final renderings that shows you the hull breach on the side of the escape pod here. And then one more here, just to drive the point home. Military on site, 509th Bomb Group members. This is a little bit more of a polish. This thing was seamless, again, 13 feet across, the size of a Volkswagen. The Daily Advertiser, February 9th, 1994, quote, "We know that everything that was recovered was brought to Hangar 84 at Roswell Air Base," Schmitt said. This is Don Schmitt, quote, "We know that people who saw this material have been threatened, have been bribed, and to this day are still scared to talk about just what they saw." So even in 1994, the bullying, the threat factor, the tone of threatening these witnesses was still going on back in 1994. Roswell Army Airfield, Hangar P3, Building 84, Roswell Air Center. This is what it looks like today. So I want to kind of take you through this area here. This is what it looks like today. And you can go there and get a little bit of a tour inside Hangar P3, Building 84. Let me take you inside here. I took these photographs years ago when I went there. And this guy gave me a tour of the inside of the hangar and all around Roswell Army Airfield, which is now the Air Center. This is the interior that, according to the military, was only supposed to be there for 10 years. Here we are in 2026, and it's still here today. So it's a testament to the builders of the hangar. You can see all of the maintenance machinery, the components that they're using to do the scrapping, and also maintenance of aerospace components. This is a kind of a floor view here, and I'm going to do one more that shows you plus or minus 3 feet of where they laid down the bodies, right in the center of the hangar. So if we could go back in time to 1947 and be at this spot, we'd be standing within 3 feet where the bodies were laid down. Let's continue here. Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico, Joseph Montoya. What story does he play in our account here? What is his role in the Roswell incident? Well, he got to see something inside the big hangar that I just showed you in the interior. Something that shocked his life to his core. Something that was unbelievable, that completely changed his entire outlook on life. And the reason why I'm showing you the water tower here is once he got out of Hangar P3 Building 84, where he saw something shocking, he skedaddled right over to this water tower, and he called family members to come pick him up immediately and get him out of there. Let me hit you what was said here. Quote, "Come and get me now. I'm at the water tower. Come on, let's go. Let's get the hell out of here. I need a drink right now. You'll never believe it. You'll never believe it. Oh my God, they weren't human." Lieutenant Governor Joseph Montoya was shown the wreckage and the bodies inside Hangar P3 Building 84 via Peter Anaya and Ruben Anaya. So here we've got this governor who got to see the craft and the bodies, and he said, you know what? This is too much for me. Get me out of this place. So that was his reaction. Let's continue on here. July 8th, 1947, 6 p.m. At least 2 badly decomposing ET bodies are transported across the base to a remote area near the incinerator. It is here that a temporary morgue is set up in a medium-sized tent surrounded by chain link fencing. So this is what went on. So after the crash site, the bodies went to P3. From there, the bodies went to the hospital at Roswell Army Airfield. From there, the first bodies sent out by Pappy Henderson in the C-54. The other ones were transported temporarily to the morgue inside the tent. So here is the morgue by the incinerator. They were there temporarily because, according to the 509th Bomb Group members that retrieved the bodies, they were already out there for the night of July 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, into the evening of the 6th and 7th, where the retrieval operation really got going on the 8th. So they were already decomposing for at least 5 days. So by the time they got there, you can imagine what it must have smelled like. Let's continue on here. Here is the location of the incinerator with the red star here, and it's on the other side of the base. Here is the location of where it is. So they wanted to move this from any part of where the pungent odor would be kind of going over to Roswell Army Air Center at the time. They didn't want that smell to permeate the whole area. So you can see what they did here. Now, July 9th, 1947, this is 6 a.m. A wooden crate measuring 4 feet high by 5 feet wide by 15 feet long, containing at least 2 ET bodies, is guarded at a bomb pit number 1 at Roswell Army Airfield. The crate is concealed by 2 circles of protective concealment screens with guards posted both inside and out. So think about the level of security here. Not only did they want civilians not to know what was going on, they were so concerned that they didn't even want the military to know what was going on. That's why they had a double row of perimeter screens. They didn't even want the 509th Bomb Group members to know what was going on. This was so secure and secret at the time. This shows you what lengths they went to. Let's continue on here. July 9th, 1947, 4 p.m. B-29 straight flush taxis over to atomic bomb pit number 1 and begins the loading process of the wooden crates into its bomb bay. So here you've got this hydraulic lift lifting up the crate with the bodies into the bomb pit of straight flush B-29. Berwyn Life, August 6, 1965. Flying over Hiroshima, this B-29 straight flush reported that the weather was all clear less than an hour before Enola Gay, another B-29, dropped its nuclear cargo over that Japanese city. Assistant engineer aboard the straight flush was Jack Bivens of LaGrange Park. So what I'm just telling you here is that this exact B-29 played a significant role in the bombing of Hiroshima. We don't want, certainly a terrible event, but that's how historic this plane was. However, we could make an argument that its more historic event was that it actually transported the bodies from Roswell Army Airfield over to 8th Air Force Fort Worth, Texas. But unfortunately, this B-29 was scrapped back in July 1954. So here we've got probably the most significant aircraft of all time, even more significant than the Wright Flyer, was scrapped back in July 1954, and we've got nothing to show for it. All we have left now is this model aircraft display at Roswell Army Air Center. I'm going to blow up this thing, and this is it. Straight flush B-29. All we've got left is this scale model over at the location here. Most significant plane in the world, basically nothing left. And this is a blow up of the nose art of B-29 straight flush. Let's continue on here. July 9th, 1947, 6 p.m. B-29 straight flush departs Fort Worth, Texas on its trip back to Roswell. As soon as the aircraft lifts off the runway, Felix Martucci, 339th Bomber Squadron, is overheard to say, "Boys, we just made history." So here you've got the B-29 that was met by a mortician over at 8th Air Force headquarters at Fort Worth. They offload the crates, they turn around, taxi to the runway, they take off, and as soon as they take off, 393rd Bomber Squadron crew member says, "Boys, we just made history." Why would he say that? Why would he make that statement, "Boys, we just made history," if they were only transporting a weather balloon? Something else going on here. Certainly not a weather balloon. Roswell Daily Record, July 9th, 1947. General Ramey empties Roswell saucer. So less than 24 hours later, we went from them recovering a flying saucer to them recovering a weather balloon. So something else is going on here. Sometime after July 9th, 1947, an autopsy was performed at the Aeromedical Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Don't know the exact date, but sometime after July 9th, 1947. Then we've got July 10th, 1947, Major Jesse Marcel and Sheridan Cabot examined Roswell debris over an open flame at the Marcel residence. So there was a couple of pieces left behind here, and they were at a bridge outing with the wives at Marcel's house, and they've done this multiple times. So Sheridan Cabot, Jesse Marcel are off here on a stove in the kitchen, and they're trying to melt one of these pieces of debris. According to Witness to Roswell, they went out to the back porch. When they came back, the debris was gone. So who knows? There are stories that it was embedded into the concrete patio. It may still be there today. Let's continue on here. Now, sometime after July 1947, Louis Rickett and Dr. Lincoln LaPaz discover fused green glass and a seamless black box 5 miles north of the debris field. So again, we're not talking about a weather balloon here. A weather balloon doesn't have enough heat to fuse sand into glass when it comes down. And what would be the point of a seamless black box in a weather balloon? No, something else going on here. We've proven it. Now, isn't it funny and isn't it interesting the type of truck that Mac Brazel was driving before July 12, 1947. So it was this rickety truck that he had to drive 75 miles back to Roswell from the debris field. And here he is driving through the town of Roswell in his rickety truck. Now, let me hit you with a illustration of his truck after July 12, 1947. Brand new truck. After July 1947, where in the world did this rancher get the money to buy a brand new truck? What's going on here? Let me go to the next slide here. What's going on here? How could a rancher who was barely making a living afford a brand new pickup truck? Was he paid off and silenced by the military? That appears to be the case, because he had enough money to leave Roswell area and start up a new ranch. Where did he get the money to do that? He was silenced. He was paid off, but this stayed in his mind for years after, all the way until he died. So what happened to the Roswell debris and hardware? Let's examine this here. Great Falls Tribune, June 29th, 1997. Helena man saw Roswell debris. Doctor will never forget remains of some type of aircraft. So this is Jesse Marcel Jr. Here are the symbols embedded on the inside wall of the I-beam, and you can see just how small this was. 1/8 wide, 3/8 inch thick, and about 2 7/8 inches in length. So there were various type of lengths of I-beam here. This was my replica that I put together just to give you an idea of what that looked like. Recovered July 7th, 1947, Roswell I-beam. Engineers reproduce symbols from UFO Crash, Albuquerque Journal, June 12, 1995. Miller Johnson applies a strip of symbols to one of his plastic reproductions of small I-beam allegedly recovered from an alien spacecraft that was reported crash near Roswell in 1947. So they did a really good job making a replica of this I-beam, and this is what they came up with. Very interesting. So 1/8 This would be 1/8 wide, 3/8 long, and then 15 inches long for the total length of the I-beam. Battelle Memorial Institute, America's oldest defense contractor from 1920, part of the Roswell debris was examined at Battelle. So this is one of the defense contractors that received portions of the Roswell debris. Let me go on to the next slide here. So here we've got these scientists at Battelle looking at the I-beam, examining. Is it still there today? Could certainly still be there today. At least one piece of debris was also sent to MIT for analysis. Portions of the Roswell debris / technology made its way to Fort Belvoir. Reference Philip Corso. We want to talk about his testimony. The Morning Call, July 6, 1997. Corso's book says he was ordered to share alien secrets found in wreckage stored at the Pentagon within military contractors. Among those secrets were stealth technology, lasers, fiber optics, and integrated circuits. These secrets were ceded to researchers at top 1947 companies such as Monsanto, Hughes Aircraft, IBM, Dow Corning, and Bell Labs, and research arm at AT&T, Corso said. Corso said that the companies weren't supposed to know where their inventions came from. So here you've got a list of all these contractors that allegedly received Roswell debris. So of course I had to do an illustration. Now it won't let you do illustrations of specific people. So this is the best that I could come up with. Colonel Philip Corso displays Roswell artifacts at the Pentagon back in 1962. So here we have him at the Pentagon. Wouldn't it be great to see the contents of that file cabinet that he had back in 1962? Then we want to talk about Marion Black Mac McGrder. How does he play a role in our Roswell story here? Well, he was deployed to England back in February of 1943 to teach Americans about night fighting, because we didn't know anything about night fighting during the early portion of the war here. And let's continue on. The Lexington Herald, August 9th, 1945. Black Mac McGrder arrives in California. So after he came back from England, he started teaching American pilots about night fighting. Mark McGrder, son of World War II pilot Marion McGrder. I did a 3-hour interview with this gentleman, and he showed me the Hall of Fame that his father got. He gave me original notes and documents and paperwork from his father. Here is the Kentucky Aviation Hall of Fame. Marion Milton McGrder, 1911 to 1997. So this proves that this was a real ace pilot. Here are some of his medals that he received. Did this when I was there with his son. Air War College, 1947-1948. Black Mac McGrder was a part of this Air War College. Here's the front cover of the document, Study History File, declassified 1947-1948, Mobilization Planning. So within this document, they show you the timeline and the meetings that took place. So we've got this Air War College at Montgomery Field. This is April 1948. They fly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And here is the field trip. You see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, field trip to Wright Field, confirming that they were actually there. And then here is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, April 1948. So they fly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And they go into this long corridor where there's a room. And this military personnel starts handing out pieces of Roswell debris. And they wanted to test the reaction of these pilots. Once they were done with the debris, they go down another long corridor. They make a left-hand turn into an open room that has a one-way mirror. And they are shown the survivor. Marion Black Mac McGrder, along with his Air War College pilots, see the survivor. He was described as squiggly, as Casper the Ghost looking. He was 3.5 to 4 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. He had arms that kind of dangled down, and he was described as looking like Casper the Ghost. So I went ahead and did a full color rendering based off of Rudy's drawing, wondering what was going through his mind back in 1948. This is my full color rendering that gives you an idea of what Marion Black Mac McGrder got to see back in April 1948 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, I'm going to take you to the statements that were made by Marion Black Mac McGrder. This is from the original notes. Quote, "They all think the bodies are at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but they are at Eglin Air Force Base in vast underground cold storage vaults there." Marion McGrder, statement after watching a documentary about Roswell. Now, 1949, 2 years after the Roswell event, military personnel stormed the home of Bill Brazel looking for any remaining scraps of debris that he may have collected during heavy rains. So you can see what they did here is not only did they pull up the floorboards, but they went into feed sacks with knives, slit them open, and emptied the debris. They were looking for Roswell debris years after the main event. That's the level that the military was persistent to try to get some of these remaining scraps of Roswell debris. Here's another version here showing you one of the military personnel slitting one of these feed bags open. And then we want to talk about this gentleman, Colonel William Blanchard. He was base commander at Roswell Army Airfield back in July 1947. General William Blanchard dies in Pentagon, top Air Force aide. He had a major heart attack inside a meeting at the Pentagon. This is Buffalo News, June 1st, 1966. What did General William Blanchard have to say about the events that took place at Roswell back in 1947? Quote, "It was the damnedest thing I ever saw," end quote. Reference meeting with Roswell Mayor William Brainerd during a dinner function in Roswell during July of 1949. So this is all we have to say about William Blanchard. This is all he gave us. And this is over a weather balloon? No, something else going on. General Ramey, once Air Force commander here, dies. This is Fort Worth Star-Telegram, March 5th, 1963. What did the architect of the cover-up have to tell us about Roswell? His boss was Hoyt Vandenberg, so he would have been the ultimate architect of the cover-up. But let's go back to General Ramey here. What did he say? What did General Ramey have to say about the events that took place at Roswell in 1947? Quote, "It was the biggest lie I ever had to tell. It was out of this world, son, out of this world." Reference question directed to General Ramey by an enlisted crewman on a B-29 while waiting on the tarmac. So they were kind of waiting on this tarmac. The general was there, and this guy turned over to him and said, "What about it, General? What was going on?" And he said it was out of this world. So no way that this was a weather balloon. Okay, I'm going to hit you with a couple of Roswell questions here. Number one, if the Roswell craft was only a weather balloon, why would former Provost Marshal Edwin Easley make the reference to the creatures just before he passed away at Parkland Hospital in Dallas? Number two, if the crash was only a weather balloon, why would Sergeant Follett Jr., with only days to live, confide in his daughter that he was at Roswell when they recovered the spaceship? "I was involved. It's all true." Number three, why would CIC Captain Sheridan Cabot refuse to talk about the Roswell events to family members with only days to live if what was recovered was only a weather balloon? Number three, if the crash was just a weather balloon, why did special unscheduled flights arrive in Roswell from Washington, D.C., White Sands, Fort Bliss, Kirtland Air Force Base, immediately after the debris was recovered? You got all these flights coming in over a weather balloon? If the Roswell craft was only a weather balloon, why did former CIC operative Joe Worth confide in Louis Rickett years after the crash? Honest to God, they still haven't figured out what that stuff is. The last one here. If the crash was only a weather balloon, Why would two teams of military personnel crisscross the debris field on hands and knees, picking up debris for 3 days and then finish up with industrial vacuum cleaners? So again, I think we've demonstrated that this was not a weather balloon. This was not a Project Mogul balloon. We've got reliable first-hand witnesses to an actual craft, debris, unknown types of material and bodies, and a survivor. This was no weather balloon. Absolutely no weather balloon. So I put all the information together about Roswell into a flyer that's about a 3x5. I did it in 2 paragraphs. I've got kind of some illustrations below that kind of gives you the idea. And I started handing these things out around downtown Roswell. I haven't got a bombshell and I haven't got a piece of debris, but I'm going to continue this research effort, and so is Tom Carey and so is Don Schmitt, and we will complete this so that we all learn the truth about what actually happened at Roswell, New Mexico in July of 1947. So I want to thank you for your attention. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'm going to continue doing these videos, and thank you for your attention.